Hello, everybody. Welcome to the August 11th, 2017 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I just realized I'm not sharing my slideshow, so give me 1 second to share that, and we'll kind of give it a little reboot. Yes, welcome to the August 11th, 2017 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. I am the Intuit Small Business Ecosystem Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at David Leary. Today we have a special guest, Manas Mukherjee, is joining us. He's a staff engineer at Intuit. He's been doing lots of research and lots of work with developers that are causing errors. And some are causing errors hundreds of thousands of times a day. Some are causing errors over and over again, unnecessarily with extra calls. Some people are just getting errors they don't know how to fix. And through this research and work he's done with dozens and dozens of developers, he's managed to create this great blog post and this great list of the top 10 errors developers are seeing that are working with the QuickBooks API and ways you can resolve those and get around those going forward. So before we jump in, though, I do have a couple of housekeeping things I just want to cover, just to make some reminders for everybody. If my next slide will advance. There we go. So the first thing is the $100,000 Small Business App Showdown is in full swing. 4 more days to enter. So you have to, if you haven't already submitted for apps.com, you probably aren't going to make the contest at this point, because we have to get you submitted for apps.com. We have to get you through the tech review, security review, the marketing review, and get you live on apps.com in time for the showdown deadline. We've ran this contest 2 years in a row, so hopefully maybe we can never make promises. Hopefully we do it again next year. But what we're doing is we're taking all the new apps that published between August 16th of last year and August 15th of this year are eligible to enter the contest once your app is live on apps.com. The apps, after they enter, there's a public voting phase. There's some other judging criteria we use, but then we take the top 10 apps to QuickBooks Connect. We give you guys booths on the show floor at the big conference in San Jose, and then the top 10 apps pitch, and the winner takes home $100,000. So even if you don't win the $100,000, just the fact of making the top 10 is a huge prize in this contest. And I would argue not even making the final 10 is actually a huge accomplishment, because people that got in this contest last year, it really helped them, because we do some events on Twitter. We do some other marketing events for you just being in the contest, and that helps some apps get some traction and help the apps communicate the value they're providing for the small business owners. So smallbusinessappshowdown.com, and you can learn more about that. And this will probably flip over to our voting phase for soon after we finish getting all the entrants in. And I know I just mentioned it, QuickBooks Connect is November 15th and the 17th. We actually are going to have a lot of developer-related events. Once you go to that website, you can actually see we're going to do a hackathon. That's going to be on the Saturday and Sunday before, so November 10th and 12th will be our pre-event hackathon. And then we're going to have an Accountant's Day, the main day, and the finale. On the Accountant's Day, we don't have it fully penciled in yet, but we're trying to do some developer-focused stuff on that day. Almost treat it like a VIP day for any developers that are involved in the apps.com and are actively on the platform. So stay tuned for more details as they come out. You want to hit quickbooksconnect.com. For those of you who have not registered yet, definitely go and register. There's special prices for devs, and get in there and register, because I think early pricing changes on August 31st. So jump all over that. And then, as always, you can find all the future events just like this Hangout, and then events we might be doing in person, all on developer.intuit.com/hub/events. And next week is just going to be an open office hours. And then the following week, we're going to have a deep dive on the PHP SDK. So Hal, that's on the team, he built the PHP SDK. He's going to go really deep on that. So if you have any friends, family that really love PHP, I think this is a good one to have everybody attend. And then 2 weeks from after that, we're going to do, we did OAuth 2.0 2 weeks ago. Now OAuth 2.0 has been out there about 4 weeks. We're going to do a kind of a Q&A for anybody who's been trying to use it, has questions, needs clarification. So we will have Vishal back to talk all about OAuth 2.0. So you can, again, sign up and register for any of those events on the events page on the hub. Without further ado, I'm going to turn off my sharing here and flip back over to Blue Jeans. And Manas, thank you very much. I think this is maybe your 3rd or 4th time now, 5th time being on the Hangout, so I do appreciate it. Every time you've brought in very wide range of topics. It's never been like one. Modest is not the expert on one thing. He gets involved in lots of things. So this is exciting. I know you. We've talked before. Like you've been deep diving. You CC me on these emails when a developer makes 200,000 calls in a half hour and slows our system down and things like that. So I'd love for you to share kind of the background on how you got in started to do that project, and then after that we can jump into your blog post and get really some specifics.
Um, sure, David. Um, our ecosystem is growing quite rapidly, and we are getting lot of API calls, especially QuickBook Online API calls. So I actually started looking at the logs, that what kind of calls they are making, and if the calls are under throttling limit, because sometimes we get support tickets that saying that okay, my requests are throttled and all. So to investigate further, we had to check the log in detail, and we don't log any actual user data. We just log on high level that what call was made and how much time it took, and some internal details. And we also check the user agents. So we had some limitation on the log, but we worked with our internal service team so that we enhanced the log, and then we persisted that data into some big data storage and did some exhaustive analysis. So that is pretty much we are doing, and some of the insights what we are getting, that we are sharing with external developers as well as with our internal teams, um, for to make our product better. Or I'm sharing those insights with external developers too, so that their apps will function better. For example, we have seen that many developers are like calling query endpoint uh, every 15 minutes or every 10 minutes. So we are suggesting them how they can leverage webhooks or how they can leverage query endpoints in a better way to reduce the number of call volume. So that way they will not face the throttling error, and if the in the backend system will also become healthy. It will able to serve the calls better, instead of just serving same data again and again in every 10 minutes. So
Sorry, I got mute. So
yeah.
I know you said you're looking at some data. So are you using like Hadoop, Splunk, combination of tools? Like how are you kind of, you don't have to give us all the secret sauce, but how are you keeping an eye on it and deep diving on these?
Yeah, so in the backend we have multiple servers, and we use a log analysis tool called Splunk, which is kind of industry standard. So using Splunk, we query that log data, and we persist one master log record into Hadoop, and then we use Hive to analyze that log and generate different kind of reports. And we have multiple internal reporting platform, and we make it available to different stakeholders, including product managers or development managers.
So
Yeah.
can developers implement these tools on their own side and keep track of errors that they're getting back from us
Yes. So
in a better way?
correct. So in the all clients, all API clients can also do the same. But it is kind of on the server side. We keep track of the whole picture. For example, our throttling limit is not per realm per app basis. It is per realm. So for example, right now it is at any given minute you can make at most 500 calls on a particular realm, right? So mm, whenever developers get throttling in out, it may not be because of their app, because let's say in a given minute, three apps are connected to a realm and they are making calls. Altogether the total number of calls are reaching 500 limit. So if that happens, then everyone, all connected apps will start getting throttling error, right?
Okay.
So that cannot be tracked from the client side. So since we have the server side log, we can track that okay, how many calls are getting made on a given realm and what happened. So it sometimes help us to share more insights with external developers.
Okay.
Sometimes we reach out to the QBO account owner also, saying that okay, you have these three connected apps, they're making huge number of calls, and maybe there can be some performance issues. So there are multiple aspects associated
Okay.
with it. Yep.
Yeah, so as of right now, there's no like magic dashboard or anything like that. Like it's when we see an outlier,
Yep.
you're personally tracking down either the small business owner to let them know
Right.
something's going on with their QuickBooks
Yeah.
online because one of their apps, because some of these apps, like we might not know who the app is if
Correct.
it's a privately published app or something. Got it. Or we're reaching out to the devs if we know who they are and working with them personally on getting
Yeah.
the errors resolved. Great. Perfect. I'll let you share your desktop or share your browser and switch over to your blog post so you can kind of walk through some of these. While you're doing that, just a reminder for those of you that are attending, please use the Q&A panel for any questions you have along the way. I know a lot of these error messages are kind of all over the board. They're not just in one bucket, but I think as we go through them and I think everybody will get clues on maybe some other errors that are similar they might be seeing in the API. But again, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel. And Manas, go ahead and share and jump into your post.
Sure, David, and let me share my screen. So, share screen. So, do you see my screen, David?
Yep, perfect. Can you
Okay.
do a zoom, maybe a control plus?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let me do that.
that's perfect.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is like 2 months back I posted this thing on our official blog. As I mentioned earlier, that I get a full picture on the errors, that what kind of errors are happening and all. So what I did was I identified top 15 errors. I mean, which are frequently causing some issues, or maybe we are seeing this error across all apps. So what I did was I tried to explain that, okay, what this error is and how we can handle it, or how we can prevent it in the first place. So in the first table I have mentioned this top 15 errors, and whoever had used these APIs, we all are aware of this thing, that there are 4 things actually as part of the response payload. One is error code, error message, where we give a brief detail on the error, and in the error detail we have details on the error. So here we have 15 such errors. The first one is duplicate name exist error. So I can talk talk a bit on this thing, that what duplicate name error exists. As the name suggests, that in QuickBook Online we have a name constraint. So if you have a customer with name, let's say Manas, you cannot create a vendor with the same name. So it seems, I mean, API follows the same business validations what we have in UI. So using API also, if you want to create another existing name with, I mean, for example, if you want to create a customer, vendor, or an employee, you will get this error. So the only way to avoid this error is I either check in your database, or first query it, select star from vendor if there is a name, and then make the call. Or to make the name really distinct, you can add some kind of suffix or prefix at the end of the name. For example, customer, I mean Manas, if you wanted to create a customer, then maybe within a bracket you can just mention Manas, I mean, he's a customer. So that way names will be really unique and you will not get this error. So in this part we have details on this. So this is 400 type of error. Error code is 6240, duplicate name, and here I have mentioned what I have just said. So here I have also mentioned that we can leverage change data capture API. We know it by the name, by its short form, that is CDC or webhooks. So sometimes if we just try to query if the name exists, it will actually increase the number of calls. So for example, before creating a customer, if you always try to check that, okay, if select star from customer where name equal Manas, and same call with vendor, same call with employee, then for every create call you need to make 3 other calls, which will increase the API volume, right? So which should be avoided. So to do that, maybe you can use webhooks or CDC. query. In that way, you will know that if something is changed, or if someone had made some changes in the existing customer name. So in this section, you will able to find all these details. uh, Maybe we can talk about one more error, which is very common. mm, uh, for example, account period close. That is a very common error. So in QuickBook Online, you can just close the book. So close the book means in a specific financial year, you cannot create any more transactions, or you cannot modify any transaction in that particular financial period. So um, from the QBO UI, from the settings panel, you can mark that account as closed. But unfortunately, we don't have any corresponding API, QBO API to track this. So it cannot be handled properly. I mean, it is, and we are internally we are looking into this thing, and we are checking if we can enhance the company info API or preference API to add this information as part of the API response. But um, hopefully it will be prioritized soon and it will be available. But since we don't have it now, right now, the only way to handle this error is kind of, there is some manual processes involved. For example, whenever someone will connect with your app, that time you may ask them that what is their accounting period close date, and you can persist that date in your database. So before making a call, you can check in your database that, okay, the transaction what I'm going to create, if that is within that accounting period date range or not. If it is, then there is no point in calling that endpoint, because you will get this error.
Got
So
it. So Maris, just so some of our developers that may not know what this is. So in the QuickBooks Online UI, actually, if I set in my preferences, all my books as of December 31st, 2016 are closed,
hmm,
nobody in the QuickBooks Online UI can actually even enter a transaction prior to December 31st of that date. So they're blocked in the UI from actually doing it without adding additional passwords, et cetera, to allow an exception for that. And so you're saying, unfortunately, we don't let a developer just read that date out of the preferences,
correct.
so they can have access to it. So if you got this error, you basically really have to ask a manual question to the end user, because we don't have any information past that. Or I guess what another option be is you actually give your end user that error, right? And say, hey, we're attempting to send data that's before your QuickBooks Online closing date. Are you sure you know?
Correct. Okay, so if we handle this thing properly, maybe it will create a better user experience, and it will reduce some unnecessary calls. So that is one. And you can see in the second last or third last, here we have two errors we have mentioned. Here we have mentioned one is required parameter line is missing in the request. So these are the errors which can definitely be resolved from the developer side. I mean, if you go through our documentation, I mean API documentation, there you will see that against each an attribute we have a marker field called if it is required. So in the development time, maybe um, we all developers should look at documentation, and we should see that which all attributes are marked as required, and we should take care of this field. If line is missing in invoice, it will not be created, so it is as expected. And sometimes we see like thousands of error associated with it, and in most cases it comes from some 2-3 apps. It is not that across all apps who are facing this similar kind of error. It is like 2-3 apps, maybe they have missed this thing, but it is creating a huge number of API calls, actual bad calls, and it is returning 400 HTTP status. So some of this error can really can be handled very easily just by going through the docs uh, and taking care of it. And the last one is also very common, where we get a 400 status code and error code is 5010. The error type is tail object error. I believe that error message could be better. Here it is a bit confusing that you and someone else were working on the same object. Basically, it is talking about, it is indicating there are some synchronization error. So for when we create an object in QuickBook Online, um, uh, via API, it returns one sync attribute. So first time when you create an object, it returns a token, sync token as 0. Whenever you modify it, then it gets changed from 1 to and consecutively, so that it tracks the changes. So sometimes what happens is, if you don't use the latest sync token, you will get this error that something is changed and you are working on the older version of that object. So to handle this, there is only one solution to it. You need to get the latest sync token by querying that object and use that sync token in your payload while doing any modification operation. For example, if you want to update that object, first you need to get the latest sync token associated with it, and then you can modify it. So here also I want to stress on one point, that before making any modification, if you make another call just to get the latest sync token, it will increase the number of API calls, right? It is bad from your side as well as from the server side. So what I would recommend is, if you leverage webhooks or CDC API, then you will get a track of what all objects are changed, and you can get the latest sync token from there itself, right? There is no need to make an unnecessary call to get the latest sync token. So at the end of this blog, I have shared the details that, okay, how to handle this thing. In most cases, most of the errors can be handled, can be addressed by leveraging CDC or webhooks, or by looking at the docs and implementing the and just implement this following the business constraints. If then most of the errors will be reduced, I believe. So most of these 400 errors are user error. um, I would recommend developers to go through docs in the development time, and it will really help them to create a better user experience, and it will help us to maintain a better ecosystem.
Okay. Manas, do are a lot of these errors, some of these caused? I think we were talking informally the one day.
Yeah.
With the minor version, can you talk about that? How, like, if you have that minor version flag not set correctly, you could get errors because you're just not calling the correct fields that are needed in the payload now. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Sure. Our APIs are versioned. So for example, like 4 years back when we released our endpoints, there was no concept of minor version. And then we improved QBO UI. We introduced a lot of new features. For example, 2 years back, we introduced the inventory management features within QuickBook Online. So to accommodate those changes and to reflect those changes in the UI, we had to make some enhancement in our APIs too. So since a lot of apps are out there in the market, we wanted to maintain backward compatibility. So to do that, we introduced a flag called minor version that we append at the end of the URL parameter. So the latest minor version is 14. So all all minor versions have cumulative changes. For example, whatever we have in minor version 6, it will have all the changes of till minor version 5 plus some extra changes in minor version 6. So this is also a best practice. We should always use the latest minor version, as the latest minor version have all the fixes, has all the fixes. Whatever whatever bug we had, whatever we had fixed, whatever new enhancement we have introduced, um, all changes will be there in the latest minor version. So if you don't use latest minor versions, you will not get the latest changes, and in some cases it will be the response may not be correct. So for example, we there were some issues on the in the reports endpoint that we fixed in minor version 4. So if you don't use minor version, or if you use minor version 3 or 2, you will not get all those fixes. And if you use our dev kits, in our dev kit, we always make sure that the latest minor versions are used by default. So right now we have released our new dev kit versions, and we are using minor version 12.
So so how is a developer supposed to know when that minor version changes? Right? Like, is it just kind of like a footnote in the thing? Do we blog about it? Do we tweet about it? Like how much should we broadcast that out? Because it feels like it's kind of important, but I'm trying to understand, like, how would a developer know? I didn't know until an informal conversation with you. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to sit at your desk eating a snack and talk to you about it. So, like, how are developers supposed to know when this minor version changes?
So in the developer docs, we have a section called release note, and there we specifically talk about the latest minor versions, what's new, what all fixed, and we introduce the same update. Actually, I mean, we share the same information as part of our developer newsletter, what we send monthly.
Okay.
So I would recommend developers to, I mean, keep an eye out on this newsletter or the release notes. I mean, that is the only way to I mean, get an update on these things. And most of the time we also tweet about this thing, that whenever we upgrade this, we let our community know that, okay, this is the latest minor version, these are the changes. So these are the three main channels through which you can get an update on this.
Got it. I'm going to. It looks like somebody has a question. I'm going to try and read that here. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah, Jack's asking I'm going to read it word for word. Is a customer add then, if not found, then do a customer change better or worse than doing a customer query, then a customer add or modification? Or instead of not found, to do an add, if found, do a change. Did that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the question. Okay. So let me see. Where is the question? Okay. Let me see the customer not found, then do a customer change better than doing customer query. Then add or mod. Okay, sometimes on the list steps. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, if it is not found, then do add. If found, do a change. Uh, yes, Jack, I think it is correct. But sometimes I would suggest that instead of doing that, instead of seeing that, okay, something is there and create a new one, maybe whenever you will set up the connection, you will fetch all the customer names, vendor names, and employee names, and have those names in your database. And before creating a new customer object or vendor object, you will check in your database. Okay, if you have no database, then of course the second one is better. That, I mean, whatever you have mentioned is right, but it is better to have a database or some kind of cache to optimize
Yeah.
this thing.
And then I think that's probably true for a lot of apps. They're going to have a customer database with the customers in it for each client. Jack's apps tend to import other people's table data. So Jack's not really storing.
Okay.
And in many cases, it's
I
multiple
see.
records they're shoving in. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, you're right. Like for most devs, yes, you should query your own database first before trying to add the item to QBO. Because chances are, if you have them in yours and you've actively been syncing, it's probably in QuickBooks as well. That makes sense. Okay. So kind of going through this, I know we have the errors. Are there any that, like, some of these I think are a small number of developers caused that error to happen hundreds of thousands of times? Are there any that it just affect almost every developer? Like every developer is getting this error, like across the board. It's very, very broad, and it's not we don't get hundreds of thousands of errors, but every developer seems to have the same mistake or the same error.
In most cases it is not. I mean, it is very fragmented, I would say. But there are a couple of common errors. For example, invalid reference ID. So that which we get whenever in the payload we refer an ID which is not which is not there in QuickBook. For example, you are creating an invoice and you are passing one customer ID, and there is no customer with that ID. So this is kind of a common error. Not all apps are getting this, but a significant number of apps are getting. So it is, I mean, I have the same recommendation over here as well, that before referencing something in your payload, first you need to make sure that that object is there. Dependent object is dependent objects are existing in your QuickBook Online account. So there are two ways of doing it. One, and the same whatever I mentioned before, that either you need to make a call and see that if that object is there, or maybe before instead of checking it every time, you can just fetch the dependent object references and persist in your database. And before and while creating that object, or while constructing, you can first check in your database, okay, for this realm, for this object type, if there is any if there is any object id of this number, let's say 50, and if it is there, then use it in your payload. Otherwise, others don't use it, or use a valid one.
Got it. So attendees that are here, I don't want to totally put Manas on the spot, but if are any of you maybe possibly getting a different error code or a different error that isn't in Manas's blog post that maybe we could open up for discussion? If you are, definitely ask it in the Q&A panel here. Or you could raise your hand, and I guess I could promote you to a panelist to ask it temporarily. Apparently nobody gets any errors on this. Everybody's code's perfect. Nobody's asking any questions here. Got it. So I'm just trying to. So before we started the call, you said that a couple of these are messages, the codes or the messages themselves are a little vague.
Yeah.
Some are very specific, like you're going to get that exact message and you're going to be able to Google for that message and you're going to hit this blog post and have the correct solution. So can you kind of talk, which ones of those are the ones you're talking about that are a little vague that sometimes could mean 2 or 3 things?
It is not like multiple things are conveyed on the same message. I would say that maybe error messages could have been better. For example, the stale object error. If you see here, the error details is you and someone else were working on this at the same time. You finished before, or someone else actually finished before you did, so your work was not saved. So basically it is talking about sync error. That means it is telling that, okay, you are not using the latest sync token. Maybe somebody else is using it. Maybe some other apps are actually working on the same object. It could be conveyed in a better way. And sometimes what I have seen is new developers get confused and they raise support ticket asking that, okay, what this error mean and how we can handle this thing. But if we had mentioned this thing in a better way, let's say you are not using the latest sync token, I mean, I think that could have been better.
Yeah,
So,
I think this message, it looks like, I think that's the actual message you get in the QuickBooks Online UI. If you are editing a customer at the same time.
Exactly.
I think we just, somehow the UI messaging got pulled over to the API. So yeah, I could see how that would be confusing.
Yeah.
On the developer side.
Okay, Jack had actually posted a new question, so
okay.
I'm reading it out, that I would be more interested in QBO or connection errors and how to handle them. I don't have the codes or messages, but knowing them would help. So Jack, the question is, are you referring to the 500 type of errors, or are you talking about like connection in the sense app to realm connection? Okay. So two things. If it is like an outages, temporary outages, in that time but when there are okay, yeah, that is true. And most probably you are referring the 500 type of error, what we get from the service, like 500, 503 or 504 proxy error or gateway timeout. uh, we accept that sometimes we get as not very frequent, but yeah, sometimes we get 504 gateway timeout error. And there is no easy way of handling it. I mean, the only solution is to have some kind of a retry logic. If it is 504, that means the system is down or there are some internal issues. So in most cases, our or I would say in most of the time we just update the outages in our status page, developer.intuit.com status. So there you will get an update that okay, what went wrong. But since it is not possible to refer the status page and all the time, I would recommend to have some kind of a retry logic in your code. So maybe when your application will get those errors, your application need to retry the calls after some time.
Yeah, one thing that Manas, if you just for example say, yes, Manas has this blog post. This is the top errors that are happening. But if you go to the developer site in another tab, Manas.
Yeah.
If you just search error code, you get a whole page with all the possible error codes that we knowingly are popping out there to devs and ways to and what that means. And then coincidentally, right next to that is the section in the docs that talks about all the minor version histories and what's been changed and how that's carried through the SDKs and what those new features are. So if you on the developer site, and I did paste a link into the error codes, and I'm going to paste a link to the minor versions in the chat as well.
Yeah. In this page we have references to all errors what we have.
It looks like it's not drawing yet, Manas. Try to switch to the other tab and switch back.
Oh, I see.
Back on Twitter.
Okay. Do you see my screen now?
Yeah, it's built. Yeah, here it is. Yep. Okay. And that minor version link is right there to the side.
Yeah, great. Minor versions.
Yeah. So this has some of the errors in your blog post, but you've really deep dived on those, and this just has all the general errors. Okay. And Jack's talking about a lot of these 500 and 503 errors he sees sometimes. So if there's a problem with QBO or platform, he's seeing some of those.
That is true.
Got it. It looks like Roger has a question. So hey, we're getting a 900 error on our sign in with Intuit page. It's https openid.intuit.com/identify-me followed by an HTTP 1.1900 error. I'm curious if you and Manas had any thoughts or input on that. So a 900 error.
Can you please share the error message if possible?
Yeah, maybe you're not able to.
So is it like you are getting this error for the first time? And it used to work before at your end, and
yeah, let me promote Roger. Roger, I'm going to promote you to a panelist so you can kind of clarify a little bit about for Manas. Give me 1 second here.
Yep.
To panelist. Hopefully he has a microphone.
Hi, David, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Perfect.
All right, great. I've got to preface this by saying I'm not the most technical person on our team, and unfortunately one of the guys that hoped to join today's chat couldn't make it, so I'm pinch hitting a little bit, but let me see if I can share my screen. I can show you the error I'm getting. Hang on 1 second. Is that okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Sure.
All right, Roger, I'm going to put you back as a panelist. I just have to be careful because I don't want to kick you out completely. So give me 1 second. It's a little dangerous. More change role to attendee. There we go. Perfect. Got it. And Dalen, I know you're on. Did you have any questions at all, or any error message? Any questions about some of the error messages, or do you have an error message you're currently getting? Don't see any questions coming in. So, Manas, what's kind of the next step on this as far as like you've done this research, right? We know these errors are happening. You're getting small incremental fixes for individual error messages, right?
Correct.
Like, where's this kind of heading from a platform perspective, kind of going forward? Like, is this going to be just easier and more self-serving for developers? Are we going to have more tools available? Like, what's kind of your vision? Where do you think this is headed?
Yeah. So we don't have any very concrete plan on that thing yet, but I can share some of the details, I mean, which we are proposing to the internal teams, and hopefully some of these things will be available in production soon. So for example, we are trying to expose some of this data in our community. I mean, for example, if you have an app and if you log into support site or help site, you can see the list of apps which you have, and if you select your app, then you will be able to see the trend, that what all errors you are getting, and you will get a corresponding suggestions that okay, these are the things you can do to reduce these errors. So right now we are reaching out to the developers who are like making a lot of requests or getting a lot of 400. In some cases we have seen that a few developers are getting more than 50% of their calls are resulting in 400. So that is really bad, and we are sharing the details, that what the types of errors, that corresponding count and all, each and everything with the developers, and we are resolving mm, uh, in 1:1 conversation basis. But in future we'll have this thing in our site, so you, when as a developer, the way you look at connection report, in the same way you can check the error report, and you can see what all errors are happening and how you can reduce those errors. So that is one thing, and we are sharing this data with our internal teams as well, like product managers and others, development managers, and we are saying that if we can fix some of these errors. So there are also some kind of concerns. For example, these QuickBook Online APIs are in production for last 4 and 5 years. So in some cases we cannot make some heavy changes, because in some cases some of us actually have handled these errors in our client code by comparing the error message or by using the error code. If we just change the error code, or if we change the error message, in some cases maybe we'll break client side code.
Okay.
So that is also one concern, but we are trying our best to address some of the issues from our end, and as well as we are sharing this insight with developers so that they can also take proactive measure to reduce these errors.
Got it. So I think like one direction is, so like right now every developer can go in, there's a developer dashboard for your app, but it really only shows you your connections. Some of the other data that could be in there is error messages or timeouts or whatever things that are you feel like we could kind of get on that dashboard. So if any developers have ideas on that, I did share the link for the Intuit developer group user voice. If you just Google Intuit developer user voice, you'll get to the Intuit developer group. And so if you have ideas of things you want to see on a developer dashboard, that's the place to go and add those as well, for sure. And actually, if you have any errors that you're like, this error wasn't clear enough, put it on the user voice as well, so we can improve some of those error messages. Great. I think if nobody else has any questions, Manas, I think we'll shut things down. And actually, it looks like we just got one in right at the nick of time here. This is another question from Jack. How does the threshold limits errors happen? Given we have a desktop app that might be installed on hundreds of different PCs and all the calls from different individual clients' PCs, Jack, basically he and his company have no control over how many calls are made.
Okay. So Jack, two questions here. So in all these clients, in different clients, do you use different consumer key and consumer secret? So basically I'm trying to understand that it is like in all instances, are you sharing your development tokens like consumer key and consumer secret, or for each client you are using a separate app, separate consumer key and consumer secret?
Hey Jack, I'll promote you to a panelist so you can actually jump out and answer that. 1 second.
Okay, same app, same consumer key. This is okay. And okay, if it is same app and same consumer key secret, then it is a bit tricky to handle these things, because if you check that check the doc, there we have clearly mentioned that our throttling limit. Hey Jack. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jack.
Yeah, I can. So yes, Jack, go ahead.
You know, given the situation, we have utilities that are basically importers. The one that we have published now is the IIF importer, and we have accounting firms, and we have franchises that are using this. and they're on the individual PC. So if they have a file to import, that we're going to make the appropriate calls, and if they all happen to do it at the same time, we'll probably be hitting those thresholds.
Okay. So here, do you have the integration with QuickBooks Desktop or QuickBooks Online?
This is with QuickBooks Online.
Okay, because why I'm asking, because you mentioned IIF file, so I thought that maybe you have integration with desktop as well. Yeah. So the thing is, and do you have any proxy server? I mean,
no.
Through which? Okay, then it is really a challenge. I mean, there is nothing can be done. Maybe in the client side there you can add some not error handling, that some kind of logic to reduce the number of calls, or some kind of scheduling you can do in the client side code. Other than that, there is nothing much can be done, because if you had a server side proxy, I mean, through which all calls were getting proxied, then you could have handled this thing in a better way. But since you don't have it, I think maybe you need to have some logic in your client side code to reduce the number of calls, because it is right now it is like 500 calls per realm per minute, and it is not per app. So that means, as I mentioned earlier, that if for a given realm, if that realm has 5 connections with 3 apps, and if one app makes 480 calls, then other 2 apps can make at most 20 calls in a given minute. So this is a constraint, and I don't think it will be changed very soon.
And then the QuickBooks Online user themselves doesn't know this either. There's not like a counter somewhere saying like,
Exactly.
oh, you have 500 calls you can make you said an hour, or is it 5?
Yeah, it is per minute.
Oh, per minute, 500 a minute. So there's no ticker. And so they have no idea like, oh, this other app should wait and use that app tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but wait 5 more minutes. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a dilemma that's going to occur. But I also think it's a little bit of an edge case. I mean, it would have to be like maybe somebody that's doing some e-commerce stuff and heavy transaction volume, and they're trying to sync it down. At the same time, they're syncing that down. Somebody, maybe another user is trying to use an app like Jax to import a bunch of transactions in, or some bank statement stuff or something like that. It definitely could happen, but it's probably a little bit more of an edge.
But if you said it's by realm.
Yeah, it's by realm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not too bad.
Yeah. And that's only a minute, right? 500 a minute.
500 a minute.
That's a lot of IIF files.
Yeah, that's a lot of transactions coming through.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
You can shut down now.
All right. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate the participation. And I'm going to send you back as an attendee, and be careful not to kick you out. Here, change to attendee. Perfect. Awesome. I think we'll get things stopped here. Manas, thank you very much. Hopefully it will be a guest again. I think right now you might be the all-time leading guest that's been on the Intuit Developer Hangout. Vishal is right behind you, though. I think he's going to come on to talk about, again, everybody, 2 weeks from now, we'll talk more about, we're going to do the deep dive on the PHP SDK. 4 weeks from now, we're going to do another go around about OAuth 2.0, all the Q&A and the questions that everybody has. So until next week, we'll do open office hours. I'll see you guys later. Thanks, Manas. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Right,
Thanks,
bye.
guys, for joining. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.